Hello everyone, so today we are going to be talking about, introducing the topic of genetics and heredity. Now, you are probably somewhat familiar that you acquire your traits from your parents, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. The other thing we're going to be talking about is how that's done and a few key pieces of terminology. Now, this terminology is really important for being successful in this particular unit, so if you have any questions, you're going to need to let me know. Generally speaking, genetics, which is the unit of study we're in, is the study of heredity, which just explains how traits are passed on from biological parents to their offspring. So take a moment right now and just think about, in what ways are you similar to your biological parents or different from your biological parents? And if you need to, pause the video. Now, for instance, I know that myself, I have very curly hair, and so does my mom, and though my dad is currently bald, he used to have curly hair. I know that I'm quite short in stature. I'm just a little over 5 feet, and you know what? I'm actually taller than my mom. So, what kind of traits have you acquired from your parents? Do you have a nose that runs in the family? I don't know why, but some families seem to have a family nose. Here are some traits that you might not have thought of. The ability to roll your tongue is actually a trait. Can you do it? Some people cannot physically do it. There's also a widow's peak, so that's that sort of pointy hairline. Do you have a widow's peak or do you have a flat hairline? Attached earlobes. Check your earlobe. Is it attached to the skin of your cheek or is there a distinct lobe there? There's also hitchhiker's thumb. Hitchhiker's thumb is the ability to sort of bend it back. And there's some people who can bend it way far back and some people who can't bend it at all. Now, if you look at your mid-digit right here, do you have any hair there? Some people do, some people don't. And sometimes the hairs are really, really small, so you might have to look closely. There's also dimple chin. Do you have a dimple chin? Do either of your parents have that? Freckles, of course, is an inherited trait. And Morton's toe, which is where your big toe is shorter than your second toe. And of course, there's tons of other things like hair, eye color, nose size, ear shape, hair color and texture. So all of these are things that you are going to inherit from your parents. Not only can we inherit physical traits, but we can also inherit biochemical traits. Biochemical traits have to do with sort of how your body responds to the environment and reacts to things. So, for example, your blood type is a type of biochemical trait. Do you know what your blood type is? Bone density. Some people are prone to having less dense bones, which can be a problem, and also skin sensitivity. Do you react to many things, or are you kind of don't find that you have many allergic reactions to things? And so we also have physiological traits. So how athletic are you going to be? Are you sensitive to heat and cold? How mobile are your joints? And so all of these things are things that we acquire from our parents through genetics. As I'm sure you know, genetic information is carried on genes. So if we take a look at this image right here, we've got our cell, and in our nucleus we have our chromosomes. And each chromosome, if we unwind it, there's the DNA. And on the DNA, there's segments that we call genes. And genes basically just code for specific things, whether it's eye color, hair color, proteins on your blood cells, whatever it is. So we have genes on our DNA that is composed, well, chromosomes are composed of DNA, and it's in our happy little nucleus. So from our last lesson, you would know that parents transmit inherited traits through their gametes. So you would get an egg from mom and a sperm from dad. And so that's what you see over here. We see an egg with 23 chromosomes and a sperm with 23 chromosomes. And when we add them together, we add these two gametes, you're going to get a zygote with a full 46 chromosomes. If you recall, if we get any extra chromosomes or are missing any chromosomes, then we would call that non-disjunction. But this cell has 46 chromosomes, so those chromosomes were pulled apart correctly. Now, these chromosomes that end up here are totally random, okay? Now, if we take a look back at meiosis, here is a starting cell, and here we have 2 red chromosomes and 2 blue chromosomes. And what can happen is that you can get 2 red chromosomes and 2 blue chromosomes. But the other thing that can happen is you could get 1 of each. And so this is a simplified version of it, where we're just looking at a total of 4 pairs. But imagine if we're talking about 46 chromosomes instead, then it becomes even more diverse. So the chromatids that end up in the gametes, so the sperm or egg, are going to be totally random. And this is important because when we get a zygote, or a baby, it means that that baby is going to be genetically diverse from their parents. If you recall, when we have a zygote that forms, so that's our little zygote that came from an egg and a sperm, there's going to be 46 chromosomes, or 23 pairs. And they're always paired up. They're called homologous pairs. Now, what you can see here is some of them are numbered, so these guys are all numbered. And those are known as the autosomes, or the autosomal chromosomes. And then we have 1 pair right here that are known as the sex chromosomes. So for the sex chromosomes, you're either going to see an X, which is the long one, and a Y, which is the short one. And so if you see X and Y, it's going to be a male, or the sex will be male. And if you see 2 X's, then it's going to be a female. And as we discussed last time, we can use a karyotype like this to determine if there has been non-disjunction. So do we have an extra chromosome? Are we missing a chromosome? And is there going to be any sort of genetic abnormalities as a result of that? So when we are thinking about how sex is determined in a baby or in a zygote, you're actually looking at those chromosomes that come from mom and dad. If we have a male who has an X chromosome and a Y chromosome, then that means that they can contribute an X or a Y. So they're going to have a sperm that has either a Y chromosome, that's my poor little sperm cell with its little flagella, or an X chromosome. And same thing for the female. The female would be XX, and they're going to be contributing an egg with an X or an egg with an X. And now it's worthwhile to know that these X's, while they're both still X chromosomes, they might be a little bit different because those chromosomes had to come from someone else as well. You can actually see that here. So we have our father, who has produced 2 sperm cells. An X, 1 sperm contains that X chromosome, and 1 sperm contains that Y chromosome. And then we have a mother who has created an egg with that X chromosome and another egg with that X chromosome. Now, when we say it's a 50-50 chance of having a boy and a girl, that's because of this right here. It just depends. Are you getting the Y chromosome from your dad, or are you getting the X chromosome from your dad? No matter what, you're going to get that X chromosome from your mom. And so, it is 50% that you're going to get a girl, and 50% that you're going to get a boy. And the only deciding factor is, will you get that Y chromosome from your father? So that's how you determine sex of an individual. Here, we're going to talk a little bit more about genes. So what we have here are homologous chromosomes. So for example, this chromosome may have come from mom, and this chromosome may have come from dad. And they're homologous because they're sort of the same. But if you take a look at it, you'll actually notice that they're different in some ways. This right here, so this space right here, maybe it's the gene that codes for eye color. And so from your, what did I say? What did I say? This was mom earlier, and this was dad, hopefully. So maybe from mom, you got the blue eye color. But from dad, you got the brown eye color. And so even though it's the gene that codes for eye color, there are more than one options that exist. And these different forms of a gene are called alleles. So this is the brown allele and this is the blue allele. Different versions of the same gene. And so those alleles are going to be found on that gene locus or gene loci. Oh no! My words got cut off by my picture. Oh well, we'll have to make do. So, we are going to talk about a few terms. And like I said at the beginning, these terms are really important to get. So the first thing is genotype, which basically means the genetic makeup. So what are those alleles? Do you remember we talked about the alleles up top? Or just 30 seconds ago? So the genotype is what is the allele for a given trait. Now, when we're talking about height, we can simplify it to say that we have T is tall and little t is not tall. So we have a few options, and you're always going to have two letters. So you can either be tall, as in capital T. You can be capital T, or you can be little t. And so this is the genotype. Genotype is always going to be represented by letters, and there should always be two letters. So 2 letters. And they should be, at least for our purposes at this moment, they should be the same letter. The concept that kind of goes with genotype is phenotype. Phenotype is the expression of the genotype. So it's like the physical appearance of an individual. It's what you actually see. So are your eyes blue? Are your eyes green? Are you tall? Are you short? It's literally what you see. So in this case, you are either tall or not tall. Your genotype will be these letters, but you will be tall or not tall. Are you with me? Genotype is what the alleles are. Alleles on your chromosomes or on your genes. And your phenotype is actually like what you see. So genotype is harder to know because we can't just take a look at your chromosomes. But we do know phenotype often just by looking at a person. I have curly hair. That's my phenotype. Okay, here are the next set of terms that are really, really important to know. So the first is homozygous. Now recall that homo means same. So homo means same, which means they're going to have two identical alleles. When we're talking about tall or not tall, homozygous can be capital T, or little t. They're the same because they're both capitals or they're both little. So it's identical. When we see this, it's homozygous. They have two identical alleles, big T, or little t. Then we have heterozygous. So where homo means the same, hetero means different. So hetero just means different. So up here, where we had 2 capital T's and 2 little t's, heterozygous means it's going to be different. So we have to have 1 big T and 1 little t. So here we are looking at different alleles. Big T, little t. Here we're looking at identical alleles. Big T, little t, little t. Okay, so we've talked about phenotype and genotype, where phenotype is what you see, and genotype is what is on your chromosomes. And we've talked about homozygous and heterozygous, where homozygous are alleles that are the same and heterozygous are 2 different alleles. Next up, we need to talk about dominant and recessive. So dominant is an allele that is expressed. So whenever it's there, it's going to be expressed, and usually it's going to be the capital. So it'll be the capital letter. Recessive, on the other hand, will not be expressed unless it is in a homozygous form. So what I mean by this is, let's say capital T is dominant. Okay, dominant. And little t is recessive. And when we're talking about questions, you're often going to see something like that. It'll just tell you capital T is dominant, little t is recessive. Now, if you recall from before, capital T means tall, and little t means not tall, but I'm just going to say short because it's faster to write. Short. Now, a person can have the genotype capital T, capital T, capital T, little t, or little t, right? We went through that. So that can be their genotype. Genotype. Because those are the letters. Let me zoom out a bit here. Oh no, everything moved. That's okay. Okay, everything moved a bit, but that's okay. So if this is their genotype, remember those are the letters, then they can also have a phenotype. And that's what they're going to look like, phenotype. Now, if it has a capital T, then they're dominant. If it has a capital T, then they're going to be tall, because capital T is dominant. So the person will literally be tall. Now, over here, there's a capital T and a little t. But we've talked about how little t is recessive, so it's not going to be expressed unless it's homozygous. So unless you have 2 little t's, it's not going to be expressed. Whenever you see a capital T that's dominant, you're going to be tall, or that person will be tall. So this will be tall, this will be tall. Now here, we do not have that capital T. Instead, we have 2 little t's. 2 little t's code for short whenever we are homozygous. So we're homozygous recessive because there's 2 little t's and little t is recessive. So it's going to be short. Now, though this might be confusing right now, I promise it'll get easier with practice. So, we talked about a few different things. We talked about how you inherit traits from your biological parents, and the type of trait or the type of allele you inherit is random. So, and that's because of meiosis. When the chromosomes are pulled apart in meiosis, it happens randomly. We also talked about a few pieces or a few really important terminology like genotype and phenotype, homozygous and heterozygous, and dominant and recessive. like I said, it's really important, so if you have any questions, then please let me know. Otherwise, good luck.